I may be a white boy, but I'm not stupid.
I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
What is so special about this egg roll?
Well, what's so special is this is the people's house. And we expect over 40,000 people to be here. It's the largest ever. And we just like to open it up to places that people see this is their place.
Still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside her.
Hold on. What about
meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services? I guess CCFS would be...
Oh, it's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that?
In Massachusetts right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
I'm sick of having my mental condition come into question.
How dare you, sir?
There was a time in America when contests of athletic prowess were a metaphor for the nobility of man. Historic moments forged by the love of the game celebrated the human potential to achieve excellence. But as time passed and the country neared the millennium, something went awry.
I'm gonna go with the charge.
Okay, tell me why.
Justin Herbert, Williams, Keenan Allen.
Okay, all right. I guess we got time for one more.
That offense.
We'll dive in deeper here. Raiders, Chargers. Who are you backing to win this one, Stephen A?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Raiders. I'll just go with that.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
But if the forces of evil should rise again to cast a shadow on the heart of the city, call it.
Question. How do we call?
He gave us a signal.
This day, we rescue a world from mysticism and tyranny, and usher in a future brighter than anything we can imagine.
Screw them. This is your time. Now go out there and take it. I got something to say. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
I just wanna be great. Yeah, 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 I just wanna be great.
Welcome to the show. You are one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Facebook, X. You can find me online all the time at westsportsguy.com. Bookmark that site to get all the social media links, podcast link, all the channel links. The video does get posted on BitChute if you are someone who goes and watches my videos on BitChute, it will be there as it gets automatically uploaded from YouTube as it's synced up that way. So that's how you can watch it later if you're watching on BitChute. But again, you can get all my links, westthesportsguy.com. And I thank you for tuning in for the live stream that I'm starting to do. Yes, I did not do one a week or two ago now, it seems, when this topic that I'm about to discuss with you was more fresh in your mind, but it's still something that's been on my mind since it happened. And given what recently happened yesterday, and it's become more apparent than ever that it still needs to be discussed. But yes, I was missing in action for a bit, caught whatever cold, sickness, whatever's going around all over the place, but I'm over it. My voice is back also, so I thought maybe I could have returned last week, but my voice wasn't 100% yet, but I'm back. Thanks for tuning in, checking things out, checking out the baseball preview as well. That's at westthesportsguy.com. Finally got that going as I was starting to get better. So that's the one thing I wanted to get done last week rather than stream. So that's done. It's there if you want to see who I think will be in the World Series as the baseball season is underway. Almost through April now. Going to be getting into May and then summer. All the seasonal stuff is we're in full spring, ready for summer, and so on and so forth. But just to kind of give you a brief synopsis of what I'm trying to accomplish here with these live streams, just kind of give it more in depth of what I normally would do in the videos that I've posted before, which you check it out at all the channels, westthesportsguy.com. And those videos are usually be about 10, 15 minutes long. I tried never really to make anything longer than that. There's few exceptions. But with the live streams, don't really want to go too far into whatever topic or topics that I'm going to be doing on the live stream. I'm going to probably keep it 30 minutes to an hour at most, depending on what it is. But as you can see with what I've got for the theme, what I got for the title, I'm talking about basketball. Now I'm not talking about the NBA. Still haven't watched a single second of the NBA since 2020. Still keeping that promise, I guess, to myself that I just, until things drastically change with that league, I'm not going back into it. And it kind of sort of pains me to even say this out loud. And I've said it to other people as well privately that this is a sport that was one of the first ones that I thoroughly enjoyed. I grew up watching Michael Jordan in the 90s, and now as we fast forward to where we are now, it's definitely not the same league. It's definitely not the same style, which I get. Different eras have different styles, and the rule changes have a massive effect in some instances, but it's not the same league that I grew up with. It's vastly different. Yes, it might be better. It might be more entertaining to some. To each his own. I'm not criticizing anybody that is continuing to watch the NBA. If you enjoy it, okay, fine. I'm not throwing any stones at you for that. However, as I'm going to discuss here with the women's game, first time I've ever done this, I have never wanted to watch a women's basketball game from start to finish. And the first one was the Final Four game between UConn and Iowa. Now, overall, I was not thoroughly impressed with what I was watching because, let's face it, men and women are different. And it was a little bit different watching the women's game. But one little factoid is that they at least were playing a fundamental aspect of basketball that's been missing in the NBA for quite some time. Even when I was still watching it, the fundamentals of, playing good defense, running pick and rolls, dribbling the ball, for goodness sake. I mean, how many times are you watching an NBA game with highlight packages, the Euro step? Traveling is all over the place, every single play. But suffice it to say, the NBA game has just kind of been muddled, my opinion. But again, if you enjoy it, that's fine. Not gonna harp on that here. But with the women's game, there was definitely more of an emphasis on the little things and the basics, playing good defense, which I will say I did watch Caitlin Clark, I think, in the game before the Final Four. I watched the end of the game, LSU against Iowa, where Iowa defeated LSU in a supposed, well, I shouldn't say supposed, it was a rematch of last year's title game where LSU beat Iowa. But I caught the end of that game, and I saw what Caitlin Clark was doing at the end of the game. Granted, it wasn't much. Like I said, I caught the end of it. And yeah, she's good. There's no doubt about it. She's really, really good. I can't really judge her with others of the past, other women basketball players, because, like I said, this was the first time the UConn Iowa game. I watched the game from beginning to end, and then I watched the title game between Iowa and South Carolina. So I can't really judge based off of a player's past. I'm just not ingrained into this game with the names and everything. So they could tell me in a broadcast, and I'm going off of what they're telling me. And is that going to be a fair judge of what's going forward with someone like me or somebody else that's watching it for the first time to gauge what's going on? That all depends on your level of interest, I guess. But after watching that UConn Iowa game, I came away impressed with the fact that these women certainly put in the work, certainly put in the effort to get to where they were, being in the Final Four, which not many people can say that they got to that point in any sport for that matter, not just basketball. But to see the competition and to see the kind of defense that was being played against Caitlin Clark from UConn in that game, that I was thoroughly impressed. And that's something that I can appreciate from the women's side of things going forward. If I continue to watch, this does not mean I'm going to be watching women's basketball exclusively. I'll get to that point here in a minute of why that's not going to be the case. But after watching that game and then seeing that the matchup was going to be against the undefeated team, South Carolina, against Iowa, and mainly Caitlin Clark, but that's not to take anything away from her teammates. Just her teammates rely on Caitlin Clark for a lot of things, and it was evident in that title game. Watching them play against South Carolina, Iowa got out to a hot start, especially Caitlin Clark. I think she scored 10 to 15 points in that first quarter of the game. Now, typically I'm used to when I watch the men's game, which I did not watch a single second of for college basketball. Typically they're playing 20-minute halves. So with the women, they're playing quarters, which still adds up to be 20-minute halves, but I digress. So first quarter, I think Caitlin Clark scored like 10 to 15 points, somewhere in that range. And okay, things were looking good. Things were looking like, okay, this could be a pretty interesting matchup going down the stretch of this game to see how the coaches are going to play and how the defenses are going to adjust and things of that nature. But essentially what that game boiled down to was South Carolina had bigger players. They out-rebounded Iowa consistently throughout the entire game, and that was the Achilles heel for Iowa. Her name escapes me, but my opinion from watching the UConn game, Iowa's second best player, their starting center, she was doing a fantastic job in that UConn game, keeping Iowa in it, with Caitlin Clark being shut down for most of that game. And that was a good indication to me that this isn't just a Caitlin Clark and everybody else type of team. I mean, there's a few players that can match up against some competitive teams in the country, it seems. But it's not just a Caitlin Clark show for Iowa. I mean, when she's on, she's on. You got to get her the ball as much as you can. That's how good she is. But on the South Carolina side, with the amount of players that they could rotate in, especially with their size, that was just big time mismatch throughout that entire game. So me breaking down a women's college basketball game is quite something, even for myself, to be talking about this. But there is an appreciation, I could admit, to what it is that we are seeing happening culturally and societally, or in society, I guess is the right way to say it, where you're going to start losing these kinds of moments here pretty quickly with the way things are boiling down. And what I'm referencing is the fact that this current regime, the Biden regime, decided to change the Title IX regulations yesterday, of course, on a Friday when, okay, everybody's getting geared up for the weekend. Drop something like this on a Friday. So they've totally rewrote Title IX to where it's no longer just male and female. I mean, Title IX deals with female spaces and things of that nature when it comes to not just in sports, but day-to-day stuff as well. But sports is a huge part of it. But now they've totally muddied it to where now it's all about this gender identity stuff. It's no longer based off of sex, male and female. It's just completely muddied to the point where now they want to start punishing people for not going by these new rules. And on top of that, saying, we're now going to restrict the fact that if somebody wants you to use their preferred pronouns, we're going to then punish you for not adhering to these wishes of whoever it is that wants to use preferred pronouns. It's just absolute lunacy. And if things are not going to course correct here in the not too distant future, I think you're going to see the very end of women's sports. And especially at a time where somebody like myself can actually appreciate this. Granted, am I paying attention for an entire season? No, doesn't mean I'm going to start at any point in time. But when it comes to title games and big tournaments and things of that nature, you're going to have somebody like myself or more pay more attention to this stuff, as long as there's no muddying of, oh, by the way, when it comes to somebody with their preferred pronouns, or by the way, somebody that's a biological male for their entire life decides to insert themselves into said sport, it just destroys everything. And you have no separation, no appreciation for the fact that both male and female have different characteristics and they perform athletic achievements in different ways. So I want to share a tweet of mine, excuse me. As long as this will do what it's supposed to do. So the tweet that I shared here, let me make that bigger. Hold on. Okay. So the tweet that I wanted to share, or there's another one I'm going to share that ties into this, was around the time just before the title game, and South Carolina head coach Don Staley said, quote, "If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play." Now, she was asked a question specifically about transgenders, biological males playing in women's sports, playing women's basketball. So she's coaching women's basketball, and she answers that question that way, basically just muddying up everything that they are accomplishing in real time in women's basketball. So I said, I watched women's basketball game, UConn v. Iowa from start to finish for the first time in my life yesterday. Overall, I wasn't impressed, but I appreciate the fact that those players put in the work to get to where they are in the Final Four. This kind of lunacy from a head coach who happens to be a woman when the title game for women's college basketball is tomorrow is unreal. Biological men being allowed to play against biological women will be the undoing of all women's athletics from here on out. And it's already happening in some circles, and it will only get worse with this kind of mindset. So therein lies a huge problem that not only is society having to deal with, but the powers that be. A head coach of a women's basketball team in the title game, the day before the game took place, is sympathetic to this mindset. It's just ludicrous. It's absolutely asinine. I picked a hell of a time to start watching women's basketball, I tell you, but I'm not going to be watching much longer if this is what your mindset's going to be. So everybody's making a big deal about now, okay, the eyeballs are going to be on the WNBA with Caitlin Clark and other players this last season in women's college basketball going out to the WNBA, getting drafted and so forth. No, if the mindset is still going to be like that with Dawn Staley in that league, no, you're not going to get more eyeballs, because why would you watch that and not watch the men's game? If you really want to watch super athletic, flying through the air, alley-oop dunks, fast pace, up and down the court constantly, you're just going to watch the men's game. You're not going to watch the women's game. But if you're going to start saying men could start playing against women like that, what's the point? What is the point of having women's leagues, women's divisions, groups, all that kind of stuff? All of it. It trickles down to the very bottom. I know you're going to start. I can hear the argument about co-ed. Well, yes, that's a thing, but that's either like for your little league and softball type of leagues, you'll have some co-ed stuff. So that's a very young age where the athletic prowess is not so demonstrably in favor of one over the other. There's some level playing field there, but again, that's at very, very specific age groups. And then when it comes to like co-ed stuff, I've seen, beer softball leagues and stuff like that, where you've got co-ed, you got women and men participating in that stuff, but that's just, like I said, it's beer league. It's not anything that's going to be at a competitive advantage where somebody is outright stealing a scholarship, stealing opportunities, stealing monetary prizes for beating women. This is something that should be just basics here. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why there is still a segment of the population that is so adamant in pushing this kind of stuff on society. This is just a hard no. You cannot do this. You're going to destroy things. Now, it's probably, with me saying that, you're going to destroy things. That's probably the intent behind a lot of it. You want to destroy societal norms for what you want to call it, a new world order. You want to call it a societal utopia, whatever it is. But if that is your intent, man, they are just hell bent on making sure that it happens at an accelerated pace. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get a hell of a lot worse. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases now, which more power to the young women, the girls or women in college athletics that are just refusing to participate against biological men that are invading their athletic spaces, more power to them that they're dropping and not even competing against them. That is the best way to go about doing this, to stop this kind of insanity. Because if they're going to continue to just creep in closer and closer and closer to these kinds of competitions, then it's all going to go to the wayside. There's no point in having it. And you're just going to lose all of it. It's just going to become one big men's athletic training ground for all their rewards, all of the accolades, all the sponsorships, all that stuff. you're going to lose it all. So for a lot of women that are taking a stand now and dropping out of their competitions, I feel really sorry for you that that's ultimately what you have to do to get things to course correct in the very immediate future. But I don't know what else they can do other than that can help them get things right to the point where this has to stop. You cannot keep doing this. So I'm going to share one more. See if I can get that a little bit bigger. Okay, we'll do it that way. So I mentioned in the last stream that I was starting to read the Bible. I was going to start reading the Bible, and I did. I'm still reading it. I've only gotten through Genesis, which some parts of it were very repetitive when it comes to talking about certain individuals' children and the lineage and that kind of stuff, but I got through it. So this was one of the first things in Genesis that I put along with this story about about Biden and the Title IX regulations being just completely rewritten to certain individuals' heart's desire. And of course, you give a mouse a cookie, it's never going to stop. So I was quoting this from Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. It was one of the first things that stood out to me when I was starting to read the Bible, in beginning with Genesis there. That was one of the first things that stood out to me, was just, whoa. This being there, and the timing of when I read this was right before Dawn Staley did what she did and said what she said before the national title game against Iowa. For her to say it's okay for men that say they're women to play against women in a women's sport. I read this before this had happened. I was just like, there's no coincidences. I can give you a more personal example of why there are no coincidences. But that one right there was, for me, just another example of, holy moly, I'm reading this at this time. And then watch what just happens like a day or two later after I read that. It's just, there are a lot of things happening, not just with sports, which, hey, you're tuning in to watch somebody talk about sports. I appreciate that. But I'm talking about more of these cultural and societal things, because this is something that is affecting everything. What is more important? What is more important to me right now? It's not doing this. It's not talking about sports. It's a leisure activity. I have done a better job in the last 10 to 15 years of putting that balance in place, where I know this is a leisure thing. This is not and I've never treated it this way, even before I got to the stage in my life, but I'm not treating it as this is the most important thing I got to deal with whenever I wake up every day. No, I don't. I don't deal with it that way. It might look like I do with the amount of stuff that I have, that I show behind me, or that I, will post on social media, or that I will talk about here. But I mean, this is a sports channel. It's what I like to do as a leisure thing. But it's not the most important thing that I think about every single day. There's a lot of other things, and I'm sure the same is for you with your personal life, that you focus on and you are more in tune with than something like this. It's a fine balance, and everybody has to find it at some point in their life. This is really something, though, that's going to come to the forefront a lot quicker than people anticipate, and I don't know. It's going to be somewhat, I mean, yes, on its face, it's going to be interesting, but at the same time, it's going to be a bit concerning how this could go. And it could also be going in a very good way. Excuse me. That was water. But the way I see this being a good thing is that, hey, if we're losing faith in a lot of things right now. We're losing faith in a lot of things that we can physically see, physically touch, physically interact with. We're also losing faith um, in religion, and that's something that has always been overall. Without going into all the details, I think overall it has been a net positive for society. That if there was more belief in whatever faith it is that you believe in, it's a good thing. But this new type of faith in in gender ideology and everything's got to be beholden to one political party. It's not healthy. This is idolatry. This is a cult like behavior that does not want to be. It has no good faith in wanting to compromise, wanting to live and let live. It's just no. They're going after very specific things, and again, you give a mouse a cookie, it's just going to keep continuing. It's never going to stop unless you stop it, put your foot down, stop it where you can, and eventually the examples of it being stopped start to reverberate and spread to the point where, okay, this we cannot ever go down this road again. We've now seen how this works, and it's not a positive for anybody. It does not help. It doesn't help any of the individuals that it affects. It does not help society as a whole. And it certainly is not going to be a net positive for anything going forward, because it's just infecting everything. And you see how it's affecting sports on its face. It's the easiest thing to boil it down to say, well, no, there's definitely physical differences between men and women. They have to be separate. If you put them together, it's just going to be men dominate everything because of the physical differences. And if you can't get behind that fact, well, then you're going to have to start going down a different road where your basic truths are going to have to get, you have to go right back to the beginning. What's a man? What's a woman? You're going to have to really dig down and get back to the basics on that stuff, because all this stuff that they're pushing on everybody just isn't going to fly. And unfortunately, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, but there are some good things out there, and the best course of action for a lot of young women and women in professional athletics or in the college ranks especially, best thing they can do right now is just refuse to participate. That's the best course of action right now. I don't know where the dads are, but that's another course of action that could also affect things in the immediate future, is that a lot more dads need to get involved. But refusing to participate, more power to you. I feel for you with all the work that you put in, that you're going to have to, it's going to be for nothing, but refuse to participate. It's just ludicrous, absolute insanity. I watched the women's basketball game for the first time, beginning to end, in my life. It's not the first time I've ever watched women's basketball. I've sporadically watched it throughout my life, but this is the first time I watched it from beginning to end. I appreciated everything that was done competition-wise to see two of the best teams in the country go at it. It was a hard-fought game, but obviously the one team that had the size and the rebounding advantage, they definitely prevailed. But this could be the last time that we see something like that with this Title IX stuff that came down. So get involved, speak up, speak out against all of this insanity that's happening. And that's really the best thing that we can hope for going forward. So with that said, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, hit that bell below, get notified when all the latest videos are posted on those channels, whether it be YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey. Thank you again for tuning in live. Get all the links at westthesportsguy.com. Make sure you bookmark that site to get all of those social media links and the channel link as well. Well, again, thank you for tuning in. The show will be posted later so you can watch it, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you live next time.